Kezia said it's a challenge because you haven't understood that they also learn. In fact, my sister, when she got to English class, should learn better than, her English was fantastic.
Yeah.
Her memory now, I think, is better than mine. The only challenge is that she had an issue with vision. So seeing the board was very difficult. So creating the kind of environment that would allow her to, learn better and learn, create expectations of her. Those weren't really there. The expectations sort of change. You don't really expect her to be at a certain level. And as a result, there are a couple of things you don't expose her to. But in reality, when she got these opportunities, then you can see her thriving and she can lead a fulfilling life.
I wanted to just break it down for us, because you're talking about underlying conditions that somebody with Down syndrome would present with. And now something that maybe a viewer might wonder, do all of them present with these underlying conditions? And then what are they in details?
No, they don't. But Anne, I didn't want to miss this question you asked about diagnosis, because there are two things here. So in these cases that have been described by both Joanne and Kezia, is that on day 2, the doctor said this is Down syndrome without any test, simply because there are some features that are very characteristic and typical. We'll not go through them once again, but as doctors you see, and you highly suspect this is a case. Of course, the real diagnosis is take a bit of DNA, have that tested, and confirm that this particular situation exists. Now that test is being done in the country. The challenge doctors face, I think to some degree, is having to disclose very sensitive and potentially disturbing, conversations to a mom who had certain expectations. Then you tell her, this is the situation. Now you have to disclose this as early as possible. I'm happy that Joanne has given her experience, which is a difficult conversation for doctors, but you can see how it played out. Because if you make the diagnosis early and find a way to bring the family to understand where we are, then the options are more, and you begin to build early. Rather than, I've had instances where there's something unpleasant that has happened or been discovered in a child, and people don't disclose. The net result is that diagnosis is delayed, understanding is missing. So it's a bit of a difficult situation that maybe if we can find a more empathetic way to bring out the message, but bring it out at the right time, which often is as soon as the person is able to receive that information, so we give the best kind of outcomes.
Now to my question that I asked, underlying conditions, what are they? Okay,
quite a number. About 50% of Down syndrome children, 50% get a cardiac condition where the heart doesn't form perfectly well, and it's because of this overexpression of genes. A number of them will have issues with eyesight, where they're not able to see clearly. Hearing becomes an issue. One that is underdiagnosed and underreported is thyroid hormone. Can be too high, can be too low, should be checked and addressed. I think there may be even parents now with Down syndrome where this has not been addressed or has been checked. A common issue is what we call hypotonia. The muscles are not as strong as you'd expect. And as a result, then everything seems to be delayed. The time they support their neck as a child, much delayed. Sitting, much delayed. Then walking, much delayed, and even standing. And that really has a ripple effect, because that sort of creates a reduced expectation in many ways, and a lot of support is needed. There could be speech. Speech is affected in quite a number of these children. It varies from child to child, levels, duration, then stature, because the skeletal system, the bones, the structure is different. So these are some of the most common things that you will see. Doesn't affect everybody. Then there are certain features that you'd see that Kezia spoke about, for example, low set ears, flat nasal bridge, and so on. These features are just features that may not necessarily have a direct impact on their health. It's just something that you can see as a doctor, and you describe this as Down syndrome.
All right, John, for you, it was